Hey, what's going on? My name is Carter and I make beauty, lifestyle, and DIY videos on my channel. As you can tell from the title, today's video is Eyeshadow 101. It is a complete beginner tutorial, the absolute basics about eyeshadow. I am so excited for this. I made this specifically for Enid. We had a little information exchange. I'm teaching her to do her eyeshadow. She told me what her favorite materials were for painting rocks. So I hope that you enjoy this, Enid, and I hope that everyone else does as well. Obviously, I can't tell you everything about eyeshadow in one video. So make sure you subscribe below and leave any questions that I didn't answer in the comment section so that I can go over them in another video and that we can do more advanced eyeshadow tutorials together in the future. I hope that you enjoy today's video. If you do, make sure you subscribe and hit the thumbs up button. But anyway, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's do it. Okay guys, so before we get into anything, we're gonna go ahead and prime our eyeballs. So I have been using this Urban Decay Eden sample for literally ever. If you can get a sample, absolutely do it. Why not? So eyeshadow primer, I totally believe in it. Some people don't believe in it. A lot of people just use concealer, which is, you know, experiment around and find what is best for you. A lot of makeup is just doing that. I prefer an eyeshadow primer. It works best for me. My lids are the oiliest part of my face, so my eyeshadow tends to crease a lot, and the area around my lids are very veiny. So because of that, I like to use an eyeshadow primer that has a little bit of color to it, and that's why I like this one from Urban Decay, because it has a yellow base to it, so it cancels out a little bit of the redness and covers up those veins so that I have a nice, smooth, even canvas. So you just want to take it from lash line up to your brow. Okay, so now that we're ready to start working, let's talk about our supplies really quick. You're going to need some brushes if you want cute eyeshadow. So I think if you have these 5 brushes, then you can get away with doing any eye look under the sun. And we're going to run through these really quickly. First, we have our flat brushes, and these are straight-haired, more dense brushes. So since they're very dense, they're going to pack on a lot of product. A more dense brush is going to carry more product from the pan to your face and keep it in place when you apply it to your face in a patting motion. So this is a straight flat brush right here. This is great for applying product to your lids. And then here we have another flat brush, but this one is a little bit fluffier. And I love that because while it is very dense and will hold on to product and deliver it to the face and pack it on well, it also has a little bit more thickness to it than this brush, which is going to allow us to blend with this in tight spaces as well. So I really like this one because it serves a double duty for us, and this is my recommendation instead of a pencil brush. A lot of people might include a pencil brush in something that you need to do your eye, but I personally think pencil brushes are really uncomfortable, and so I wouldn't recommend them to beginners. I always feel like I'm going to stab my eye out with them, and I've done my eyeshadow like a million times and I still feel like they're too dense and too just firm, and they make me feel like I'm going to poke my eye out. So that's why I'm not recommending a pencil brush. Okay, and then the next brush, this is great for application too. This is an angled brush. This is great for doing your brows or putting on a liner. It's great for applying shadow to smaller areas and getting more precise. So with this one, you can apply shadow and then blend it out with a different brush, which is another reason I'm not recommending a pencil brush, because we can meet our pencil brush needs elsewhere and with more precision, my friend. Okay, and then finally we have the goddesses of all makeup brushes, the blending brushes. We love the blending brushes. These are essential to doing good eyeshadow, okay? By the way, none of these brushes have to be the exact same ones I'm holding up. You're just looking for similar sizes, shapes, and densities. This type of brush you can get from the art store. Totally recommend it. Find the best cheap brush that you can. Okay, so this is the largest. I'm just holding it against this so that you can see it better. This is the largest fleece brush. This is the largest crease brush that I have. As you can see, it is a nice, large, fluffy brush. The bristles are nice and flexible and they move around a lot. What you really want here is you want a brush that has a nice high point right here but is tapered off on the sides, because the tapering on those sides that's going to help you blend a lot. This is what I typically use first in my crease every single time that I do my makeup. And then secondly, this is our other crease brush. When I hold them next to each other, you can tell this one is a little bit smaller and a little bit more pinched. So it's a little bit more rectangular than rounded, if that makes sense. This one is also fluffy, but since it's a little bit smaller and pinched, we're gonna have more precision with it. When we're working with darker colors, we want more control, so a smaller brush is gonna be perfect. There are way more brushes in the world of eyeshadow brushes than that, and you might want more. You might find that eventually you want more shapes and sizes, because more shapes and sizes do help. That's why they exist. But you can do any basic eye look with these 5 brushes. You do not have to go out and spend $1 million. What you do want to do is make sure that whatever brushes that you are buying are soft. Real Techniques make great brushes. I would definitely recommend those. Those are the most readily accessible and most dependable that I'm aware of. I really like their brushes. And then the other thing that you're going to need is eyeshadow. So these are my personal favorite palettes at the moment. I'm really enjoying the mattes in the Tartelette palette, and I just enjoy everything in here. Mattes are imperative to any eye look. I really like warmer shades personally. It looks great with my eyes, but it's also really popular right now. In the world of makeup, warm shades are super trendy. And then this is a look into the Anastasia palette. This is the best eyeshadow palette I've ever used. I literally love it. What I love about it is it has a range of wearable colors, but then there's also some pops of colors in here for you when you want to have a little bit more fun. These are super blendable and flipping amazing. I love them. The mattes in here are really, really good. I'm not as fond of the shimmer shades, but it's not like they suck. There are some that I'm just like, I just don't get what I want from them. Like, they work, but they're just not my favorite metallic shades. But we are going to be working from these today because they are my current favorites. So I'm going to show you how they work. So the first thing that we're going to do is set our eyeshadow primer. I've been talking to you guys for a while. If you have any creasing already, probably right here in your crease, you can go ahead and just pat that out with your finger, because if you set creases in place, they're going to stick around. So we're just going to set that in place with some powder. I'm using the shade S'more from the Tartelette palette. I'm going to take that on one of my packing brushes, so one of my straight flat brushes, and I'm going to just pack that anywhere that I put the eyeshadow primer, just to set that in place. So essentially from lash line to brow. This is going to help us because powders work better on top of powders, and sometimes eyeshadow can stick and cling to eyeshadow primer. So if we go ahead and set it with an eyeshadow color that matches our skin tone or is a couple of shades lighter, if you're having a hard time figuring out what color to set your eyeshadow with, set it with whatever you used to set your under eye, or just match it to that concealer color. Another thing that is going to do is help us achieve that blank canvas where our eyeshadows can really pop. So I'm going to be really in-depth with this tutorial, guys. It might be a little bit long. I'm going to try to tell you as much as I possibly can. So powders blend really well on top of powders, and now that we've got our powder down, we can start adding some color to our eye look. I'm going to pick up my nice fluffy brush. This is a crease brush again, and we're going to jump into what is referred to as the transition shade. This is going to be our first step in building up our crease. Just like the white shade, it's going to help us blend out the colors that we put on after it, and it's going to be the lightest color that goes into our eye that's going to start to help us build up a gradient from the darkest colors here to the lightest colors there. All right, so before we can start working on our crease, we need to define where our crease is, and this can get confusing for some people, especially when they have a hooded eye, but have no fear, I also have a hooded eye. The space between the top of your eyeball and your orbital bone, that's your crease. Even if you have a hooded eye, so like I have a hooded eye, look. I don't have a defined crease, and it creates a line right here. That's not your actual crease. So if you have a hooded eye, ignore it, and rest an eyeshadow brush on the top of your lid, start rolling it upward, and when it really hits that spot, like that crease, I know I look really weird, but this is my actual crease, so this is what I'm going to play to. So I'm going to pick up this color right here. It's called Burnt Orange, and something that people don't talk about a lot on YouTube is how to pick up product on your brush. I like to be really controlled about it. I personally believe in just picking up a small amount of product, just on the tip of my brush, tapping off any excess so I don't get a lot of fallout or crazy pigmentation, And then you want to start by laying down your brush where you want the most pigmentation, which for us, with our transition shade, and really almost every shade we're going to be using today, is going to be in our outer corner of our crease. I'm going to lay it right here. This is the outermost portion of my crease. And I'm just going to start wiggling it back and forth right there. So as you can see, the color is beginning to move onto my face from the brush, so I can start to wiggle it back and forth. What we're trying to do is move our product from the outer portion towards the inner portion of our eye, just following our crease. Windshield wiper motions are going to be the most helpful here. They're really easy to do. They feel really comfortable, but you can also use swirling motions, which really help me. You might start to like the swirling motions as you get more comfortable with an eyeshadow brush. So I need a little bit more product, so this is what I was talking about. Dip back in more often and build up the color slowly because it makes it a lot easier for you to blend. So I'm just going to keep repeating the same step, putting the eyeshadow in the outer area of the eye, and then as the product leaves the brush, blending it out further with my windshield wiper motions. One thing you want to make sure that you're doing while you're blending, guys, is being light. Like, you don't want to be super aggressive with your eye, and holding your brush towards the end is going to help you do that. Being aggressive is going to limit how much the eyeshadow, the powder, can actually move because it's going to be stuck under your brush. Whereas being gentle allows the eyeshadow to flick around and move. All right, so as you can see, I've got a pretty good amount of crease color showing up now, but how do I know if it's blended? What I really want to be blended is this top edge here, and what I want is for you to not be able to tell where it ends and where it begins. So I kind of need to move up on my eye with my blending brush for that. Before I do it, I'm going to make sure there's no product on the brush. If I move up the eye with product on my brush, things are going to get totally out of hand and I'm going to have orange all the way up here. If I still have too much product on my brush, then I will just wipe it off on a paper towel or a rag. It's best to use something that's reusable. And then once my brush is nice and clean, I'll just hit the edge really softly to make sure that it is smooth and that there aren't any harsh lines. And usually this is where my circular motions come in. I start to move in circular motions to blend out my outer edge, but windshield wiper works fine too. So essentially what I'm trying to do is just move this color up towards my upper crease so that it blends in with my brow bone color, and we don't need any additional product to do that. We just want to use what's already on the eye. The first shade that you use in your crease is the one that's going to go the furthest in towards the inner corner and the furthest up towards the brow. But we want it to be lighter the further it is towards the inner corner and lighter the further up it is towards the brow. That's why we start on the outer corner here and then move in and up as the product leaves the brush. So keep dipping into your product until you get the color saturation that you're looking for the look that you're doing. And another thing that you want to be conscious of when you're blending is not letting the product get too low on the eye. Imagine there's a line extending from your lower lash line. You want to keep the product above all of that to give it a lifted look. So make sure that when you're blending, you're not dragging your brush down too far. Though if you do, you can just really gently hit it with the finger. That's always what I do, but you can clean it up later with concealer or something too, but usually just gently dusting it off with my finger works fine for me. And also remember, when you're learning, like, nothing's that big of a deal. It comes off. Do it before bed. Do it when nobody's gonna see you. It takes all the pressure off. Okay, so my transition shade is done, and for those of you with hooded eyes, as you can see, it comes well above this little line in my eye to help me start to build up my faux crease, if you will. Now we need to jump into something a little bit darker, and normally, since I like warmer tones on my eyes, I would pick something like this, which is called Warmth. This is the opposite tone of my eyes on the color wheel, so it's really gonna make my eyes pop. But for the purposes of this video, I'm gonna do a neutral kind of everyday look for the average woman. So instead, we're gonna jump into the shade Latte right here, which is a little bit darker of a brown and is gonna give me a little bit more shadow in my crease than the previous shade. Again, I like to be very mindful when I dip my product in. When I'm using my smaller brush, I am going to just dip it in on one side. So it's hard to tell because my brush is dirty, but I only have product on this side of the brush, and that is going to allow me to start to pat it exactly where I want it and just keep up more precision. So essentially, we're going to follow the same exact step as we just did with our transition shade, laying the color in the outer corner where we want it to be the darkest, and this is the area we want more depth, so that's why we want it to be the darkest there, and that's why we want the most color pigmentation. So I'm going to just lay this darker color down right here and wiggle it back and forth just like I did previously. And once the product leaves the brush and is on my skin, I will start to move it inward more. Typically with this shade, I also start to build it up on my outer corner of my lid and kind of this lower portion of our outer V. Let me tell you what the outer V is really quick in case you're not aware. That's going to go from your lash line up to the outermost point of your crease and then just in just a tiny bit. That is typically the area that we darken up the most to give us the most depth and dimension. And that's going to start to give my lid space the dimension that it is going to carry as well. And then we're also going to carry it through the crease, just like we did with the transition shade, laying the color at the outer corner, blending in as the product leaves the brush. And then once everything is off the brush, then we can kind of start moving it upwards to blend out that outer edge. And remember, we want very little to no product here while we do this, or else things will get too dramatic. Our darker colors will move up too high. The idea here, again, is that we're creating a gradient. So our lightest color is going to go up the highest, our mid-tone is going to go a little bit lower, and then our darkest shade is going to go even lower and just very strictly stay in our outer corner and just slightly into our crease. Now, a lot of times I will jump back in with my large fluffy brush, my transition shade brush, and with no additional product, I will just lightly haze the edge of that second darkest color just to make sure there's no seam, there's no edge, that it's nice and blended. Everything I am going to do is to make sure that I am blended. All right, so that looks good to me. I'm just going to go ahead and work on my other eye. And again, just to reiterate, I'm going to start at the outer corner of my crease. Let that product kind of get onto the face and then start to move it inward. Just picking up product as often as you need to and building it up little by little. If you go in with too much product at once, it's not going to be a big deal. It's just a little bit harder to blend. So building it up little by little is going to help you in the long run. Just going to make it a little bit easier on you. Another thing that you really want to make sure that you're doing when you switch back and forth between your different eyes is that you are achieving symmetry. So you want your eye look obviously to be the same on both eyes. And the way that you're going to do that is by creating the same shape and building up to the same color saturation. So as you can see, I've got my first and my second color on. I'm looking a little bit deeper here and it's fading upward beautifully from my crease to my brow bone. And what I want to do next is really add some depth into my outer corner. So I'm going to jump into this shade right here in the Modern Renaissance palette. This is the shade Cypress Umber. And I'm using my smaller fluffy brush. And again, just making sure that I get that product on the precise area that I want it and tap off any excess. We're going to apply this from our lash line up to that outer point in our crease, and then we're going to slowly start to blend it just a little bit inward. And remember, we're not going to take this product as high as we took our other products. We want to keep it nice and defined and low. The higher that we go, the more dramatic it is. All right, so I'm just going to start pressing that color at the lash line and moving upwards towards my crease. And it is a V shape, so if you're feeling confused, just try to create a V right there. See what I mean? Now we don't want this to go all the way in at all. Again, that's going to make it more dramatic. So we want that color to start tapering off for sure. So make sure you have very little product on your brush by the time you're working it into your crease, because you can always add more, but it's a lot harder to take product away. And as always, make sure you're utilizing your little rag. If there's too much product on your brush, that's fine. You can just wipe it off. So I have no product on my brush at this point at all. I just wiped it all off, and now I'm just strictly blending. I often like to blend, add product, blend, wipe my product off. Wipe my brush off, blend, make sure it's all going good. You know what I'm saying? Often darker matte tones are the hardest ones to work with, so just keep going. All right, I'm not sure if you can tell, but there's like a little bald patch right there in my shadow, so I'm going to make sure I work up product into that spot. So the layering of all of these products really helps you to get a lot of depth and dimension, and it also helps you to blend easier, because think about it. It's going to be a lot easier to blend this shade right here on top of this shade once this shade is down. You know what I'm saying? Because these are closer in color. If you have a hooded eye and you're wondering how high you need to take your darker color, you just want it to barely be peeking out from the fold. That is going to start to create recession there and create depth there. You don't want that to go too high. You just want to barely be able to see that nice dark color, and then you'll see it a lot when you lift your eye. I'm actually going to build mine up a little bit more. I think I can take it a little bit higher. Once I'm using my dark color, look how much more restrained my range of motion is. I'm really just working in this outer area. I'm not flailing my brush around as much as I was before, like not even close, because I just want to concentrate this darker color out here. I don't want it to get out of hand. So now, as you can see, it's a little bit more visible when I have my eye open and I'm looking forward. And I don't have that depth yet on this eye. If I had kept it too low and the depth was just in my crease and I didn't take it high enough, it would look like this. Since I've taken the crease color high enough on this side, I've got a little bit more depth and dimension. Sometimes you might feel like once you add darker colors that the lighter colors get lost. So if you feel that way, you can just go back in with your fluffy brush and your transition shade. And you want to use a very, very, very light amount of product when you do this, and just start really gently going over the edge. And not only will this help blend out any of the little last bits of the dark color that may not be blended, but they will make sure that that beautiful gradient isn't lost and that we still have a very rich look that has lots of dimension to it. I've explained this to you guys with the word steps, and you do want to go in this order, but if you need to pop back into a lighter color or retouch up your brow bone, do it, girl. And another thing I really want to say is that you want to take these techniques that I'm telling you, like to put the darker colors on the outer corner and the blending techniques, take those with you, but in some ways you're going to want to redefine the shapes for your own face. Everyone might not have a giant outer V like I have. I have a ton of space between my lash line and my brow, and I have a really hooded eye, so when it falls, all of that disappears, you know what I'm saying? Make sure that whenever you're watching a makeup tutorial, you want to take the techniques that they're using and then apply it to your bone structure. That's how you're going to get the most flattering look for you. And one more thing that no one ever talks about on YouTube is asymmetry in your eyes. My eyes aren't completely symmetrical, probably like almost everybody's on the planet. And this one tends to, just while I'm talking and hanging out, this one tends to look like I have a bit more of a defined crease, and this one tends to be a little bit more droopy. So I usually have to work a little bit harder at defining this crease. I usually have to darken it up a little bit more and take my crease color a little bit higher because of the nature of the eye. So sometimes you might need to do different things on the eye to make them look the same. So you'll learn that with time as you do your eyeshadow. You'll learn the little quirks and the different shapes in your face that you need to do that wouldn't necessarily be done to all faces. That's not going to be for everybody. That's just for those that it's applicable to, like me. It can actually, if you're having a hard time telling where to put the colors in your crease, it can be really helpful to move your mirror down low and then look down, because that can help you see where your actual crease is and really bring out the actual shape of your bone structure, help you see that and visualize it a little bit more. So one thing that I like to do is go ahead and get all of my mattes down before I start working with my shimmers. And that's what I have just completed. I've got all of my matte shades on my eyes at this point. One, I find that mattes can't get as deeply pigmented when they're sitting on top of shimmers as they can when they are used on their own. Another thing is that for the average woman, mattes are going to be best from here up, especially the older that we get. Texture is going to be created on our eyes as we mature, and so we want to kind of flatter that as best we can, and mattes are the most flattering as far as that goes. That's not to say that you can't do whatever you want, because please God, do whatever you want. Sometimes it's totally appropriate to throw a shimmer up there, or at least a satin, and it'll look absolutely fabulous. And if you're doing something editorial and, you know, artistic, literally do whatever you want. But if we're just talking about what is the most flattering for the average woman on a day-to-day basis, then we're going to keep mostly mattes up here. Maybe we'll pop a little bit of shimmer on the brow bone. That's fine. If we put shimmers down and then we start doing our mattes, the likelihood that that shimmer will move around all over and up here increases. And that's why I like to do my shimmers last. The whole point is that we can do our lid shade now. So we need to pop a shimmery, metallic, bright, pretty shade on our lid space now. We go with Primavera, which has a little bit more goldy yellow undertones. I love Primavera. It's stunning. This one is known to have a little bit of fallout, but I'm going to use it anyway. We want to pack this shade on tightly all over the lid, so we're going to use a flat brush. Because this one is known to have fallout, I'm going to go ahead and use it with some setting spray. This is going to keep it in place more, but also help it show up more metallic. So this is a technique that I really like to use to really make things pop. And you want it to be most pigmented on the inner portion of your lid, so make sure you're starting there when you apply the shade. And go ahead and take it up to meet the crease color and out to meet the matte colors in your outer V. But don't take it into your crease. You want to stop just at the crease where that depth of color is. If you don't have a setting spray, you can use a little bit of water. I do prefer to wet the powder on the brush, to spray it once the shadow is on the brush, as opposed to wetting my brush and then sticking it in the pan and then wetting my entire eyeshadow, which kind of ruins it. It makes like a film over top of your eyeshadow. If you need to, after this step, you can pop back in with one of your darker shades and touch up your outer corner. Again, like I've said repeatedly, sometimes when you add other colors, the colors underneath it can appear a little bit lost. So I usually just hit it with a little touch up. Again, don't get too crazy. Don't blend everything too much, or you'll start spreading the shimmers and the glitters around your eye. Okay, and then we're also going to pop our inner corner. I was just watching Kathleen Lights, and she said that she likes to pop her inner corner with the shade Candle that I just said I hated. So we're going to try that today. She said do it with your finger. You'll hate it with a brush because the shade is super powdery and chalky and gross. So I'm going to try that with my finger. Wow, it's really bright, but it's like too much for this look. I wish I hadn't done it. Bummer. I am just going to wipe a little of that away. I am wiping upward and upward only to fix this mistake because this is a glittery shadow and I don't want glitter moving down here. Instead, to highlight, I'm going to jump into this shade right here called Sunrise. It's got a little bit of a yellow undertone, but it only has a sheen. It doesn't have any chunks of glitter, so it's better for the inner corner, especially for a daytime look. I don't know why I tried to get crazy. So the inner corner highlight, you want to use just like a nice little small brush. It's just a small little detail, and it adds a pop to the inner corner of the eye. It adds some brightness and some youthfulness. That shade is a little bit yellow for me to use on my brow bone, so I'm going to jump into Tempera in the Modern Renaissance palette. Tempera is a great shade. It reads as a matte, but it's got like a slight sheen that like drives me absolutely nuts in a good way. I am going to just concentrate that right here at the highest point of my arch, right there underneath my brow, and just really let the product get off the brush in that area, moving backward, then I'll move it forward. And then I can also move it down a little bit. Now, we totally want this color to blend into our transition shade, but usually if something's really shimmery, I like to try to keep it concentrated up here. So do remember that if you're using something more shimmery than this in the future, don't blend it down too far. Like, you want to blend it down a little bit so it's not like a stripe of shimmer across your face. I promise you do. But if you do it too far down, shimmery shades can start to make things look droopy. So make sure if you blend down too far that you just pop a little bit more of that transition shade there to even things out. And that just really helps to make you look lifted, and having that bright pop really helps to contrast the rest of the eye look. Now we're gonna work on our lower lash line, and I super regret putting something shimmery on this brush. Normally I like to keep this brush completely matte. So if you do put something shimmery on there, just make sure you wipe it off really good so they're not moving glitters around our eye, because we want our mattes to look matte. Usually I just repeat the same exact steps that I took in my crease and I apply them to my lower lash line. So I'm going to start with my transition shade, again being super careful to just get a very small amount of product on one side of the brush. Since this is going to be on our lower lash line, we do not need a lot of product. Like, think about it. The amount of space on our lower lash line is like slim pickings, you know? And then again, we want the most depth in the outer corner. So I'm just going to start by applying, by pressing right there. And as the product applies where I want it, then I can be more frivolous with my movements and move it in more. And this is just giving us the same kind of insurance as we had with our transition shade up top. It's going to help us blend. It's going to make things look more defined. It's going to accentuate our lash line without being too powerful. Thank you, transition shade. We love you. And again, just building that product up slowly. Eyeshadow is subjective, so if you want this to be darker, build it up darker. And if you want it to be lighter, make it nice and light. Depends on what you're doing, you know? Are you going out for the night? Are you going to work? That'll, you know, define what you do, like the depth of color that you build up and everything like that. Okay, and then we are going to pop into our angle brush. This is our little precision brush, and we're going to use our darkest color, Cypress Umber. We're going to skip our mid-tone brown on the lower lash line because it is not that serious. Again, always tapping off any excess product, and I'm just going to pat this into the lash line. Again, since this is a dark color, we're not going to be moving our brush around as much. And I am patting just to keep everything in place. Patting applies, whereas rubbing blends and moves. So if you want something to be precise, pat. If you want to blend, rub. So as you can see, we can have a little bit of more thickness out here, but we want to keep it more tighter into the lash line here and more thin up against our lash line. That helps it look more natural, and we want the depth on the outside. But as we move on to the inside, we want it to be nice and thin. That's what's going to help us stay chic and sophisticated looking. If we want like a more grungy, dramatic, bold eye, we can like really smoke out the lower lash line and go crazy with it. So I never personally like to define the bottom without defining the top. It can look a little droopy in my opinion. So using the same brush, I am going to pat some of that darkest product against my lash line. We can make it a little bit thicker and flick up more in the outer corner. But as we move into the inner corner, we want to make sure that it's nice and tight and close to the lower lash line. That way, our lash line is defined, but we've still got that openness here. And since we're thicker out here, it's giving us that smoke and that flirtiness and that drama. There's one more step that I like to take before putting on my mascara that I think makes all the difference in the world with my eyeshadow, and it's actually eyeliner. And it's called Tightlining. It's going to thicken up the lash line and make it look super voluminous and flirty. I'm obsessed with it, and I never do my makeup without Tightlining. So if you lift up your eye, there's this little ridge underneath your lashes there, and you are going to use a brown or a black eyeliner to deepen up that ridge. And it is one of the most uncomfortable makeup things that I do. It like tickles really bad. It makes your eyes water, makes you wanna stop. That's what it is. But if you look away, keep your eye looking away from the eyeliner pencil at all times. It makes it a lot more comfortable. And so you want to try to do that, thicken up that ridge without writing on your upper lid. And then once you do that, your lash line is going to look hella thick, okay? And then you can go ahead and apply your mascara. But the one I'm currently trying out is the Huge Extreme Lash Mascara by Stila. And I do like this one too. The only problem is the wand is so big, I always get it all over my eyes and stuff. And then mascara tips. I'm going to share some with you guys because this is all about eyeballs. Wiggle your mascara back and forth. Get as close to the base as you can and then wiggle it back and forth. I've heard some people in the industry call that a tease. Definitely believe in that. And I also shape my lashes as I go. I pull them in the direction that I want them. And I'm a firm believer in multiple coats, baby. Now, there is always the debate of top and bottom lashes or just top. Here's my look with just the top. I do think it makes for a very lifted and youthful look, just the top. So I just wanted to show you that's what my look looks like with just top mascara. And now I'm going to do the bottom. If you get any mascara anywhere on your face, just wait for it to dry and then flake it off once it's dry. Okay guys, that is the complete eyeshadow look today. I hope that you enjoyed. I especially hope that you enjoyed it, Enid, and that you found the time to watch this very long video, even though you're a mom. Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to subscribe. And now I have to ask you to hit the little bell thing too. If you want to get notifications about every video that I post, make sure you hit the bell. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. Bye.